Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, debt-slaves, serfs, peasants, vassals. I am a useful idiot. Today I would like to talk about the effective corporate tax rate of 35%. I know it sounds like a pretty boring topic, but it's actually pretty exciting. I'm gonna tell you why. And we got all the GOP candidates talking about it constantly. We have all the bankers talking about it. We got all the CEOs talking about it. Government's talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. It's all splashed across the news about what a punishing corporate tax rate we have, the highest corporate tax rate in the world, and how if we could lift that burden from the corporations, they would love to create all these new jobs for Americans. And I'm going to tell you exactly why that's a bunch of smoke and mirrors and a bunch of hooey. More of the same from the same bad actors. So let's go down from this list of some of the big corporations in America. Let's find out just exactly how punishing their tax burden is. Let's start with, of course, the biggie, General Electric. They made $81 billion over the last 10 years. And even though they paid an average of 23% since 2002, in 2002, 2008, 2009, and 2010, they paid zero taxes. Let's go to DuPont. They made $14.7 billion in profits in the last 10 years. And even though they had record profits in 2010, they still managed to get a $109 million tax refund. They pay an average corporate tax rate of 17%. Let's look at Boeing. They paid no taxes in the last 3 years. They had $9 billion in profits last year, and they got a $178 million refund. Let's go to Verizon. Verizon hasn't paid any taxes for the last 3 years. In fact, they got $12 billion in government subsidies between 2008 and 2010. How about ExxonMobil? They're the world's second largest company, and they don't really have to reveal their tax records. They claim they're paying 47% in corporate taxes. But they managed to get a $46 million refund from the IRS last year. Well, let's look at Boeing. They paid no taxes in the last 3 years. They had $9 billion in profits. They got a $178 million refund. Look at FedEx. They have paid no taxes in the last 3 years. Look at Google. 2010, they had $10.8 billion in profit. Their effective tax rate was 2.4%. Let's look at Amazon. Amazon, between 2005 and 2009, had $3.5 billion in profits, and they paid $152 million in taxes over the same 4 years. Their effective corporate tax rate was 4.33%. How about Carnival Cruise Lines? 2005 to 2009, they had $11 billion in revenue, and they paid $126 million in taxes over those 4 years, and they had a effective corporate tax rate of 1.12%. And then the big daddy of them all right now is News Corp with Rupert Murdoch, who, of course, the UK just decided he's not even competent to run an international company. But it sounds to me like he's doing a pretty good job, because between 2007 and 2010, News Corp had $2.4 billion in profits, and they managed to get $4.8 billion in tax refunds, an effective tax rate of negative 46% tax rate, a far cry from the effective corporate tax rate of 35%. So those are just some of the biggies, and I could go down a whole list of all the major corporations in America, and the story would be the same. Pfizer, Wells Fargo, Honeywell, Yahoo, BP, Goldman Sachs, AT&T, IBM, Bank of America, Citigroup, all making money hand over fist, all paying far, far, far below the corporate tax rate of 35%. This is all a shell game. It's all bogus. And how do they do it? How do they do it? Well, let's look at some of the samples here. We have incorporations in foreign countries, loopholes in tax codes. We have allocating costs to low-tax subsidiaries, intercompany transactions, buying companies with tax losses, deferring taxes to the future, subsidiary locations as tax breaks, It just goes on and on and on. They find every loophole. In fact, considering most of the corporations help write our legislation, they make sure those loopholes are in there. So they get to do this stuff. So how nice would it be if you had your checking account and you went to Vegas and you blew it all, and you went back home and you're completely in the negative with a whole pile of overdraft fees on top of that. And then the government came around and just completely recapitalized you. How nice would that be? Just filled up your checking account with money so you could keep holding your life together and moving through this economic calamity. Because that's essentially what's going on here. So what we're finding out is that not only did the government help recapitalize all the broke banks who took all the risks and none of the losses, but as it turns out, the government is also recapitalizing all these broke corporations. It's no accident that most of these companies that haven't been paying any taxes, a lot of it's been in the last 3 or 4 years since the crash. So this is a concerted effort by the government to recapitalize all the banks and all the corporations who all suffered in this crash. And now they're flush with money and they're all happy, while the American people still wallow in decay and collapse and economic calamity. So that's how fair this all is. So just want to say that, let's quit all this bullshit and whining and bellyaching about the corporate tax rate of 35% is holding America back, holding our corporations back, and keeping them from creating jobs. That's just a line so they can get more of what they want. And I also think it shouldn't be lost on anybody that Google and Verizon got treated especially well, and I assume that's because they're on board with the government corporate partnership to spy on all Americans, so they had to throw them a little extra bone. So anyway, that's my little diatribe about the effective corporate tax rate of 35%, which only exists in some kind of fantasy land that economists and bankers and government and corporate scum all talk about like it's this heavy burden, and there isn't one corporation in this country that pays anything even remotely close to that. So quit your bitching.